Over the past month, I've been releasing my top 80 quarterbacks for the 2021 college football season. Now, making this list was really difficult as I had to take into account players that were coming off injuries, players who transferred, potential quarterback battles, and a whole lot more. Each week, I'm releasing 10 quarterbacks from the list. Last week, we took a look at the quarterbacks that I had ranked 21 through 30, meaning that this week we're going to be taking a look at the quarterbacks ranked 11 through 20. Before we get to today's video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to the channel. If you love college football content like this, then this is definitely the place for you. Kicking off our list at number 20 is a quarterback I feel like we haven't really seen tap into his full potential yet, and that's UCLA quarterback Dorian Thompson Robinson. During his 3 years with the Bruins, he's thrown for more than 5,100 yards with 41 passing touchdowns, with 600 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. We had a small sample size of 5 games from him last season, but it looks like he was finally beginning to cement himself as one of the top quarterbacks in the Pac-12. In 5 games, he threw for over 1,100 yards with 12 passing touchdowns, while rushing for 300 yards with 3 rushing touchdowns. His first game of the season saw him throw for 300 yards with 4 touchdowns, while rushing for 100 yards and a rushing touchdown against Colorado. Then he threw for 200 yards with 3 passing touchdowns with a rushing touchdown against Cal. Then, against USC, he completed 30 of 36 passes for 365 yards and 4 passing touchdowns. Over the course of a 12-game season, his numbers would have looked fantastic. As he enters his senior campaign, I think that this is the year that Dorian Thompson Robinson will be making a case at the end of the season for being potentially the best quarterback in the entire Pac-12. Coming up next at number 19 is one of the most accurate passers in all of college football, Kent State quarterback Dustin Krumm. Over the last 2 seasons, Krumm has thrown for nearly 4,000 yards in 17 games. He has 32 passing touchdowns and only 4 interceptions while completing more than 70% of his passes. Over the last 2 seasons, he's also rushed for nearly 1,000 yards with 10 rushing touchdowns as well. Krumm appeared in only 4 games last season, but was on pace for 3,600 yards and 36 passing touchdowns over the course of a full season. He threw at least 3 touchdown passes in 3 games, with 2 in his other game. He also added a rushing touchdown in 3 of 4 games. Krumm has thrown for at least 200 yards in 10 games over his career and at least 2 touchdowns in 10 games as well. More impressively though, he has 14 games with at least 50 rushing yards and 10 games with at least 1 rushing touchdown. Crumm's going to need 24 passing touchdowns to take over the lead in Kent State history in touchdown passes, and he'll need 3,800 passing yards to take the lead as well. And I think it's safe to say, if he plays a full 12 games, he's definitely going to surpass both of those marks. Up next at 18 is the quarterback who I guarantee had the best season in college football last season that you likely didn't hear about, Nevada quarterback Carson Strong. In only 9 games for the Wolfpack, he threw for 2,900 yards with 27 passing touchdowns and only 4 interceptions. He was named the Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year and was named to the All-Mountain West first team. He was 2nd in the FBS in completions per game, 7th in passing yards per game, 7th in completion percentage, and 9th in touchdown passes. He threw for at least 260 yards in all but 1 game and threw for more than 335 yards 5 different times. He had a passing touchdown in all 9 games he played and had at least 2 passing touchdowns in all but 1 game. Carson Strong also has 2 games with 5 passing touchdowns, including the Potato Bowl when he completed 80% of his passes for just under 300 yards with 5 touchdowns and no interceptions. There are some mock drafts I've seen out there that have Carson Strong as a potential first rounder in next year's NFL draft, so he's definitely a name to keep an eye on moving forward. Coming in at number 17, we have Florida State quarterback Mackenzie Melton. I don't think there's a quarterback that I'm going to be rooting for more in 2021 than Melton. In fact, I think the entire country is going to be pulling for him more than any other quarterback. This was a guy who was one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football a few years ago. Then he suffered a devastating leg injury that not only nearly ended his football career, but almost resulted in his leg being amputated. Now he's back and he's the quarterback for the Seminoles, and I'm expecting big things from him this season. In his 3 years of playing quarterback for UCF, he threw for 8,700 yards with 72 passing touchdowns, while also rushing for 1,100 yards with 20 rushing touchdowns. When we saw him last in 2018, he threw for 2,700 yards with 25 touchdown passes in pretty much only 9 games. He also had 9 rushing touchdowns as well. Although he missed about 1/4 of the season, he still finished 6th in Heisman voting. Over his career, Melton has 13 games with at least 300 passing yards and 13 games with at least 3 passing touchdowns. If Mackenzie Melton is finally fully recovered and healthy, he's going to be Florida State's best quarterback since Jameis Winston, and there's a very solid chance that he can have the Seminoles in contention for the ACC title game. Up next at number 16, we have Boston College quarterback Phil Jacobic. Last year, in his first year as the starter, he threw for 2,500 yards with 17 passing touchdowns. His 2,500 passing yards over his first 10 starts were the most by any Boston College quarterback in school history. He became the first player in BC history to total 4 300-yard passing games in his first 5 career starts at quarterback, and he was the first BC quarterback with 4 or more 300-yard games in a season since Matt Ryan. He threw a touchdown in his first 9 games of the season and had at least 2 in 7 games. He was a highly touted quarterback coming out of high school for a reason. After sitting behind Ian Book at Notre Dame, he showed what he's capable of doing as a starter. I think there's a strong chance that he builds off of last season, and he's potentially in contention to be a top 10 quarterback when the college football season is over. Coming in at number 15, we have Indiana quarterback Michael Penix Jr. We only saw him for 6 games last season and 6 games the year prior. Over his last 2 seasons, he's appeared in 12 games, throwing for over 3,000 yards with 28 passing touchdowns. Now, that's a pretty good full season if you ask me. He started 6 games last year before he suffered a season-ending ACL injury. In his 6 games, he threw for 1,700 yards with 14 passing touchdowns. His 275 passing yards per game were the most in the Big Ten. Prior to his injury, he led the conference in passing yards, passing yardage per game, passing touchdowns, and completions. His 3 final full games he played in 2020 were fantastic, and he was really beginning to take the next step in his career. Against Michigan, he threw for 350 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Against Michigan State, 320 yards with 2 touchdowns. Then, on the road against Ohio State, he had the game of his life and almost pulled off an incredible upset. He threw for 491 yards with 5 passing touchdowns. If he can build off what he was starting to do last season, there's a solid chance that he can be the best quarterback in the Big Ten this season. Coming up next at number 14, we have Arizona State quarterback Jayden Daniels. This is a quarterback who has really flown under the radar over his first 2 seasons, but as someone who has watched every snap of his, this guy is truly the real deal. In 16 games as the starting quarterback for ASU, he's thrown for nearly 3,700 yards with 22 passing touchdowns and only 3 interceptions. He's also added 600 yards on the ground with 7 rushing touchdowns. The game that everyone remembers was when he took down top 5 team in Oregon as a true freshman, when he threw for over 400 yards with 3 touchdowns. Although he's only played in 16 games, Daniels has proven to be one of the most clutch quarterbacks in the entire country, as he's already led ASU to multiple game-winning drives. There are some mock drafts I've seen that have him as a potential first-round quarterback in 2022. With a regular season under his belt, there's a solid chance that Daniels can lead the Devils to a potential Pac-12 title victory. Coming in at number 13 is a quarterback we haven't really seen much of, but there is a lot of hype surrounding him in 2021, and that's Alabama quarterback Bryce Young. He attempted only 22 passes last year while sitting behind Mac Jones, but he'll be taking over the reins for this season. Entering the 2021 campaign, he's top 3 to 5 in most preseason Heisman odds. And for good reason. Alabama is yet again going to have an amazing offense surrounding him. Not to mention, Young is the highest quarterback recruit in Alabama's history. Coming out of high school, he was the nation's #1 dual-threat quarterback. He was named the All-American Bowl Player of the Year, the 2019 High School Quarterback of the Year, and the Maxwell Offensive Player of the Year. And he shared the Max Preps Player of the Year as well. During his senior campaign in high school, he completed just under 75% of his passes for 4,500 yards with 58 passing touchdowns, while also adding 10 rushing touchdowns as well. I know we haven't seen him prove it yet, but I think by the end of the season, he's going to be a consensus top 10 quarterback and potentially in the running for the Heisman Trophy. Up next at number 12, we have another quarterback from the SEC, Ole Miss quarterback Matt Corral. There was a lot of hype surrounding him when he was coming out of high school, and we got glimpses last season as to why he could be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. He was a finalist for the Manning Award and was a semifinalist for the Davey O'Brien Award. In 10 games, he completed 71% of his passes for 3,300 yards with 29 passing touchdowns. He also added over 500 yards on the ground with 4 rushing touchdowns. He threw for at least 320 yards in 7 games. His best game of the season came against South Carolina, when he threw for 512 yards with 4 passing touchdowns on only 28 completions. In a win over Vanderbilt, he completed an astonishing 31 of 34 passes for 412 yards with 6 passing touchdowns. Out of all of his games last season, there were 2 in which he was truly awful. Against LSU, he threw 5 interceptions, and then against Arkansas, he somehow threw 6 interceptions. If you were to take those 2 games out of the equation, he finished the season with 24 passing touchdowns and 3 interceptions in only 8 games. so he was really good for 80% of his action, but he had 2 real stinkers. If he's able to improve and get those turnover numbers down, Corral could very easily have one of the best seasons by a quarterback in SEC history this upcoming season. Wrapping up our list today at number 11 is Coastal Carolina quarterback Grayson Mccall. The Chanticleers came out of nowhere last season, and it was largely due to the play of their freshman quarterback. He racked up quite the accolades, as he was named a 2020 Manning Award finalist, a 2020 Maxwell Award semifinalist, a 2020 Davey O'Brien National Quarterback Award semifinalist, and was named the Sun Belt Freshman Player of the Year and the Sun Belt Player of the Year as well. His 2,500 passing yards led the Sun Belt, and his 26 passing touchdowns were top 10 in the country. His 184.3 passing efficiency ranking was the 5th best among all quarterbacks. He was also a force on the ground, as he had 600 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. All eyes are going to be on the Chanticleers in 2021, so if they're able to go nearly perfect again, there's a strong chance that Grayson Mccall could find himself receiving Heisman votes at the end of the season. Well, that wraps up this portion of my rankings for this video. Was there a quarterback I mentioned that you thought was too high or too low on this list? Drop a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I'm ranking my top 80 quarterbacks for the upcoming season, so stay tuned where next week I'm going to be releasing my top 10 quarterbacks entering this season. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications so you don't miss that video. If you love college football content like this, then this is definitely the place for you. As always, thank you so much guys for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.